Okay, so last time I talked a lot about the how phone phreaking was done, but technical stuff aside, there are some crazy stories that came out of this era, so here are two of my favorite stories about phone phreaking. And just to start, this is like early hacking, sort of going down the grapevine thing, so maybe these are just urban legends, maybe these actually happened. I make no guarantees. This first one, again, comes from this book, Steal This Computer, just like the last episode. Amazing book, you gotta check it out. So, the story starts with a guy who I shall refer to as Frank. Frank was exploring, or quite possibly war dialing, numbers for the 840 exchange in the 804 area code. So those are numbers that go 804, 840, something, 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 something. Almost all of these numbers played a recording as if they were just disconnected or they didn't exist. Except when he ended with 4 predictable numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, Frank would get a ring. Now at this point in the story, they don't specify whether or not it's several predictable numbers that acted like this, or they just wanted to keep the real number secret and noted that it was something that could be easily guessed. I'm guessing it would be the latter. The call connected to a female operator with a southern accent. Frank also noticed that the call wasn't being charged, it was just a free and open line. Operator, can I help you? Yes, what number have I reached? What number did you dial, sir? She made up some random number that was similar to the one he dialed and gave it to her. I'm sorry, that's not the number you reached. She hung up. Now needless to say, Frank was interested in whatever this was he found. Before calling back, he experimented with the 840 exchange in other area codes. In some, it acted like a regular exchange with real numbers, but in others, it behaved the exact same way as this first mystery number. Same recordings, same last 4 digits, same southern operator. He also noticed that the numbers formed a near-perfect line between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. So, just like a golf course, red flags everywhere already. Frank calls back from a payphone, this time with a plan. Operator, can I help you? Yes, this is the phone company. Real nice cover up there, dude. I'm testing the line and we don't seem to have an identification on your circuit. What office is this, please? What number are you trying to reach? I'm not trying to reach any number, I'm trying to identify this circuit. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Ma'am, if I don't get an ID on this line, I'll have to disconnect it. We show no record of it here. Hold on a moment, sir. A few minutes pass before she comes back. Sir, I can have someone speak to you. Would you give me your number, please? Frank was ready for this and had the payphone's number ready. Mr. Redacted, we'll get back to you. She hangs up. The phone rings almost instantly. Far too fast for someone to be contacted and dial a number back. Frank realizes they weren't asking for his number, they were verifying it. They already traced the call. Hello? He tried his best to sound authoritative despite growing nervous. This is Mr. Redacted. Did you just make an inquiry to my office concerning a phone number? Now, when you get a call from someone sounding angry and they're using words like inquiry, you know you're f***ed. Yes, I need to identify. What you need is advice. Don't ever call this number again. Forget you ever knew it. Frank hung up because no shit he did. He just thoroughly f***ed around, he had no intention of finding out, and he got out of there. A few days went by where Frank was just trying to kind of think of what this number could possibly be. Then he remembered his uncle works for the government. Pittsburgh to DC, government uncle, worth a shot. The next time Frank sees him, he casually brings up the number. His uncle didn't know anything about it, but said he'd see what they could find. They part ways, time passes. The next time they see each other, Frank's uncle is livid, demanding Frank tells him where he found the number. Well, what is it, Frank, please? We have to know. His uncle answers, it's the president's bomb shelter. Now, in my 23 years of life, I will admit I have f***ed up a number of times. Sometimes small, sometimes large, sometimes resulting in some fan mail from certain agencies, but not once has one of my f***ups ever pushed the needle slightly closer to Armageddon. I'm not saying something as small as this would have done it, but like, if you've read about some of the ways we came close to a nuclear accident, this wouldn't have not done it, you know? Like, we definitely were at DEFCON 4.95 for a few seconds there. Now, this next one's pretty special to me, partly because it's a creepy story that's a real example of a classic horror trope, but partly because the only copy of this story that I could find is on a encrypted hard drive in the bottom of a drawer that had an archive of old photos from my iPhone 8. Cannot find it anywhere online. So at some point in sophomore year in high school, I read this, took a photo, and because of that, this might now be the first and only telling of this story online. And that, like, that's probably not true, but if it was, that would be sick. It comes from the Hacker Magazine 2600, which of course is our favorite frequency, volume 14, edition 4. I looked on Internet Archive for this, I looked on the 2600 website for an archived version of this, and I couldn't find it. So if anybody happens to know where this specific copy lives digitally, please let me know, that would just be swell. It starts with someone writing into 2600 asking for help, and it begins like this. Dear 2600, please help. My sister-in-law had an extremely disturbing interruption last Saturday morning at 2 a.m. as she was speaking to her son, whose car had broken down 70 miles from home. He was on a cell phone and she was at home on a hardwired phone. During this conversation, a man's voice announced that he was on an extension in the basement, he knew she was alone, and he was going to burn the house down and kill her. Nasty stuff indeed. Bit of an understatement, but alright. Her son became extremely upset, as did she, of course. After hearing this story, I told her there's a good likelihood that someone in the vicinity of her son's cell phone was able to not only listen to, but transmit into their conversation. Could you please let me know if this is possible? I have no interest in doing this, but would like to offer her this explanation, which would be much more comforting than hearing that there was probably someone in her basement. If this is possible, is there any way to block this intrusion in the future, or at least know that the intrusion is cellular and not landline based? Thanks for your help. I'm a fan of the discovery of weak points in systems, but certainly not when the goal is activity such as this. 2600 writer JR responds, none of us see this thing as a goal of any sort. There are several things you can do to figure out where this is coming from. Checking the basement obviously would answer some questions, but we don't advise it while such a call is in progress. Of course, if you don't have an extension in the basement, or you don't have a basement at all, you can at least know you're somewhat safe. To determine which of the phones is being intercepted, and it's most likely not the cellular one from our experience, simply flash the switch hook, which is the little lever the phone sits on when you set it back down to hang up, on the wired phone. If someone is on the extension, they will still be there when you return. Many switches don't disconnect an incoming call when you do this, but if you have three-way or your switch allows you to turn off call waiting in the middle of a call, you should be able to get a shutter dial tone no matter what. And usually someone on your extension will seem very loud and close. The most likely scenario is that someone clipped onto the landline from the outside, which is much more common than people think, as the next letter testifies. Now, I don't know how they did this, but if I had to guess, I would say they used something called the auto verify trunk, which is like a special phone line that phone operators can call into and connect to a already existing call and basically tell them to get off, clear the line for emergency scenarios. This is something that theoretically a phone phreaker could do. It uses the 2600 Hz as a key part of the verification process, so we know with a whistle you can beat that. And this is terrifying, right? Like, it's the old call coming from the house story, but it's real and scary and scary. And if it was me in that scenario, I would just burn the house down myself. Alright, you're gonna spook me, enjoy 2 stories of flaming get falling on your head. Anyways, I'm Kellen, and remember, flat cameras, very easy to destroy.